Yeah, that's probably the one that damaged the engine block. Oh, and the other bit of that, well, that's here. Right, muckers, welcome back. This is another episode where we're looking a bit more at Joe Hewes' Skidsteer. So just a quick recap for those of you that don't know what went on with this particular little item. Basically, Joe got this Skidsteer as a non-runner from a guy who bought it as a non-runner from, I think, the original owner. And it was a great little Skidsteer up until the point where the son got onto it and he decided that he would have a go, and within a few minutes he'd flipped it up onto its back. Now, there shouldn't be too much of a problem with that. These sort of things happen with Skidsteers. However, there is a problem when you allow it to keep running on its back like that while you decide to take a selfie.
Oh, fucking twat.
So, the result of that was that it hydraulicked and snapped a few con rods, buggered up all the block, and basically just made a complete mess of it. So turned a really nice little Skidsteer into a non-runner in about 10 seconds. So, Joe then remembered that he had it at the back of his yard and said to me, Mucker, I could do with that as it'd be a handy little bit of kit, because they're not just used for moving soil and stuff like that. You can use them with a set of pallet tines, you can use them with a grapple, you could, you know, I've gone through all this before on one of my Skidsteer videos. Just go through a quick list. Buckets, grapples, forks, blades, stump grinders, chain trenchers, grader bars, grader boxes, post hole borers, post knockers, road planers, cutting wheels, brushes, flail heads, mowing heads, brash cutters. They are so versatile. Anyway, like I said, Joe said, can we get this running for him? And yeah, I said, we'll do it in between jobs. He said, yeah, absolutely fine. It's just that he said he really doesn't have the time to do it because he's playing with his T34 and whatever. So in between jobs that I have, I shall get Rex onto it and also myself when I have the time. So what have we done so far? So the first thing I had to determine is whether the engine was actually free and it would turn. But when I went to get a socket on the end of the crank here, I leant on the fan blades and as you can see, it turns freely. So that's all good. So now we know that the engine's free, we can invest a little bit more time, effort and money into it and get it running. So the next thing was we had to look at what we need to get hold of regarding when we come to put it all together. Okay, so that's the hydraulic pump in there, all right? And there's a spline on the end. Now, we've got to find a way of getting that spline drive shaft on the end of the pump to connect up with the flywheel on the back of the engine. And you can see there are bolt holes there, but we need something to bolt onto that to transfer the power from the engine to the pump. So this is what we've got. You can see here that this unit here should bolt up onto the back of that flywheel because you've got those bolt holes here. Plus, you have got a splined insert so the shaft of the pump can go in there. So hopefully, if we can get this mounted up onto the splined shaft on the pump and this bolted up on the back of the engine, then the engine should be able to drive the pump. However, in order to keep a lot of crud out of where the flywheel is and where the pump drive itself is, you got this cover. So if you can imagine the pump is this end and goes through there where that shaft is. So this basically sandwiches up with a bit of clearance from there to there. So that will bolt up onto the back there. So obviously it'll be like that, I should imagine. And yeah, that'll be something like that. So that'll all bolt up there and there. And that'll just keep the crud out between the flywheel and the pump itself and off that drive coupling. You can't really see much in here, but let me just turn that light on. Oh, That looks like some kind of Victorian brothel lamp. Let's try something a little bit better than that. Right, that's a little bit better. Now, what we've got here is the drive coupling that goes on to the engine, on the actual flywheel, plus the back cover. But that brings us to the next problem, is all these bits, that's fantastic, have to be bolted up together. And bolts are a problem. Joe very kindly gave me boxes of parts from the original engine and all the couplings and drive bits and whatever, and manifolds here, and these are mainly engine parts. Oh, look, fantastic. So we know that engine was a good starter. What a treat. And Joe also gave me lots of boxes full of nuts and bolts and washers and whatever. But in his infinite wisdom, Joe thought this was just like an old T-34 tank or a Abbott or a Centurion, and you can just leave it outside in the rain. Not quite such a good idea, Joe.
Timmy!
So, now what we've got to do is try and either clean a lot of these up or match them up with new ones. And that is what takes a lot of the time, is try to find all the bolts and the nuts, and as I said, whether you can reuse them just by cleaning them, because some of them are fine, others are just absolutely rusted together, and we're going to have to replace them. But what sort of length, what sort of thread, and that's where all the time goes. You will also have seen that we have actually removed the cab, and we've done that so we can get easier access, because before we were having to climb in through the front here all the while, or lean through where this window was missing and try and do stuff. And then when you want to move anything in here, you're sort of hunched double down in there. So we've got access above now. We've got access from both sides and the rear and the front. Just makes the job so much easier. Now, since the last video, I've had a couple of chairborne keyboard mechanics, obviously sat nicely snuggled up in their mother's basement.
I'm Dave, I'm 73, I'm a registered childminder from Middlesex.
Well, I'll just rebuild the original engine. Just replacing a couple of pistons isn't that difficult. Well, I'm very glad for you that you've got all that free time in which you would rebuild the original engine. I, unfortunately, don't have that luxury, because I live in the real world and not behind a keyboard, and I actually have to do this stuff, and I've got a load of other projects, and the quickest way of getting this running for Joe is for us to put another engine in it. But it must be a complete joy to have that much free time that you can sit behind your keyboard and tell everybody about what you would do, and also have the free time to watch the CCTV footage of your mother behind the red line being scuttled by the Amazon delivery driver. But crack on. Yeah, that's probably the one that damaged the engine block. Oh, and the other bit of that, well, that's here. Now, unfortunately, the one part that didn't come with this job lot as such, with the replacement and original parts, is the crank itself. And I'd love to have seen that. Maybe it still is at Joe's, but it wasn't in with all the other parts. So I don't think it was with this. Somebody's really just binned it because it was in such a state. But as I said, I would like to have seen that just to see the damage that occurred. So that's where we are really with it. We've got all the components where they should be, we think, up to this point, the main part of getting the engine in place. So now we know that it's free, we can get it running. That shouldn't be too much of an issue. The other thing we've then got to do is find all the nuts and bolts. And that, Marcus, is what takes the time. But we'll do it, and we'll just match them up. So some things are quite sort of generic, they're just standard, but there's other things that are quite specific to this. And, you know, as I said, that's what actually takes the time. Once you've got them all, bolting it all together happens very quickly. The other thing are starter motors. Well, one of these, I think, comes off the Skidsteer. One comes off the compressor engine. I don't know which is which, so I've got to just determine that. And then once I know which one is which, then that can be taken away and refurbished, because we'll stick with an original, I think. But yeah, I've got to see which is which first. But they're both free, and the Bendix comes out all right. It sort of winds up and down. But as I said, we just have to see which one it is first before we send it off for overhaul. Right, muckers. Now, one thing we haven't had for a while is a good old question time. So this week's question time is the little Skidsteer, right? Now, that obviously is Joe Hewes, and it's yellow, and the top is white. That's just rust. But when we do get it running and it comes to finishing off, I thought, well, we'll give it a coat of paint just to protect it. But what do? Do we keep it the original yellow and white? Or because it belongs to Joe, do we paint it another colour? And if so, what colour? Put your answers in the old squid pit below in the comment section. And then we'll find out what colour you lot think this should be when we're finished. Yeah. So, there we go, muckers. It's that time again by the looks of it. Now, if you want to help the channel, and then in turn, we can then help the collie dogs, because the bigger the channel gets, the more we can do for them. There's Tom. You beautiful boy, aren't you? Blind as a bat, aren't you, Tom? You don't mind, though, do you? You're happy, aren't you? That's all that matters, isn't it, Tom, hey? Where are you off to now? So I don't know. I'm blind. All you've got to do is give the video a like, the old thumbs up. And that doesn't cost you a single penny. It's absolutely free. And if you want to also, if you want to follow for more stuff we do, you can subscribe to the channel. And if you want some Lord Muck merchandise in the Lord Muck shop, you can get there. We've got hoodies, t-shirts, polo shirts, mugs, pens, all that sort of stuff, and loads of stickers. Just go over to lordmuckshop.com. All right. But like I said, the more we can do, the more stuff we can sell, the more we can help the dogs like you, don't we, huh? Yeah, I know. Anyway, until the next one, do well.